All right, welcome back to All Cars Y'all. I am John. It is time for another Motorweek retro review reaction, and this one is all for me, honestly. In fact, this one and then I think the next one are going to be purely because I want to do them. This is the 1986 Jaguar XJ6 Vanden Plas. And this one I do have a personal history with, although this is an era when I was 15, 16 years old, and I had one of my best friends. He's still one of my best friends. His father, it's a story, but his father was one of the most unpretentious men you'll ever meet. He was just the nicest guy, but very, very successful. And he had an old Volvo 240, as I recall. And the family wanted to surprise him, and they bought him a Jaguar XJ. And I tell you what, I'll tell you the end of the story at the end of the video because, well, it indicated to us why the Japanese were going to continue to dominate everything. But I'm excited to watch this because I love Jaguars. I love their history. In that dream world of I've won the lottery, I gotta think I might buy a Jaguar because I just love them. So I'm excited to see what Motorweek said about this when it was brand spanking new. So please grab your beverage of choice and let's have a little trip down memory lane, guys.
Motorweek is made possible by Lucas Oil, Auto Value and Bumper to Bumper, and TireRack.com.
And whether your business is producing cars or producing television programs, you always have to consider the needs of the market. Sometimes that means taking the risk of trying to give consumers what they want before they know they want it. Case in point, Jaguar. With better quality control than ever before, they've been on the comeback trail. The demand for this familiar XJ6 just keeps on growing. So what do? Well, they're going to dump this XJ6 and come out with a whole new car. So now it's time to see just how much of a risk Jaguar is taking.
That is so interesting because a couple of things. First off, yeah, if you produce shows, right? You've got to constantly try to improve and give people something new and hope that they like it. This, I don't know what year that is specifically. Obviously, it dates back to the 70s or even the 60s. I am not a deep aficionado of Jaguar and their models versus the decades and everything else. That just looks kind of old. But I do think that is a gorgeous car. I think that's a spectacularly gorgeous car. But the big thing that jumped out for me there is him saying ever improving quality. So this is 1986. I've heard that Jaguar is improving their quality, improving their reliability for 40 years now. Just curious when it's going to happen.
A big one. But Jaguar wasn't going to take the risk of changing the name. The new car is still called XJ6. And in truth, styling hasn't changed much. The lines have just been smoothed out. Round quad headlights serve as a reminder of the old car. Flush composite ones are only available on the European versions for now, but we wish they were offered here. As for dimensions, vital measurements are fractionally larger than before. Plus, the new car is 200 pounds lighter and doesn't share a single part with the old XJ6.
So let's look at this. Let's look at the styling real quick. I'm going to rewind a little bit here if I can find a good spot. Well, of course it didn't go to it. The front, I think it's a step backwards. It certainly steps into the 80s with that bumper, but I don't know. I appreciate they kept the round headlights, but the lack of the sculpting around the headlights just starts to look like a more generic sedan. And same thing with the grille. It just looks generally more sedate, more this could be anything. The profile, if I can get to it here, is, to me, that says 60s formal sedan. It doesn't say contemporary 80s. Now, I might be overly harsh on this. I'm not looking at an 86 Cadillac and a '86 Benz and an '86 BMW next to this. But it just strikes me as a very formal, upright greenhouse around it. And then that sloping trunk at the rear with a single horizontal line, two horizontal lines, a single horizontal line going from the headlights to the taillights, and then that lower one across the body, giving it some length. I don't know. It's not beautiful. That's what it boils down to. Jaguars to me are beautiful, and this one doesn't strike me as beautiful. And in fact, those tires look too big for the car. They look more like somebody is modding this car and putting oversized, almost off-roading tires on it. I don't love it. I think the angles are just kind of weird here, and they've got these older touches like these door handles here. Jaguar's dipping their toe in the future, but they didn't leap into it. And I think that's probably, I'm going to guess here, that is probably a finance thing, that they didn't have the money for an all-new one, so they gussied this one up and tried to modernize it a little bit.
Larger than before. Plus, the new car is 206. Inside, there also seems to be more evolution than revolution, but lots of little improvements. There are better power controls for the front seats, but still no position memory. The handbrake is now a handle adjacent to the console, and the seats have more support. But with the sunroof that comes standard, drivers over 6 feet will be short on headroom. It's not until you look at the XJ6 dash that you realize how different this car is from the old one. Virtually all systems are computer controlled. The XJ6 has a total of 7 microprocessors. But Jaguar didn't go overboard. The secondary gauges are the only ones with electronic readouts. The tach and speedometer are traditional analog. And Jaguar replaced its warning lights with one computerized trouble diagram. In addition to being advanced, everything is arranged fairly well. The trip computer and cruise control are situated on the pad to the right of the wheel. Lights and signals are on the pad to the left. But here are some things we didn't like. The horn is located on the turn signal stalk, no doubt to make room for an eventual airbag. Designing for the airbag also means the steering wheel telescopes but doesn't tilt. Since the seat adjusts for height, it's a feature we don't think anyone will miss. And here's a feature we liked. This unique J shifter that lets you manually shift the 4-speed automatic without the danger of hitting an unwanted gear. It's been dubbed the Randall handle after Jaguar design chief J.N. Randall.
Okay, there's so much to talk about there. First off, let's talk about the good. I think this interior is gorgeous. I really do. There is something special. When it's done right, there is something special about Jaguar interiors. British interiors, let's say. This looks rich and inviting and comfortable, like a sitting room filled with books with a roaring fireplace next to it. I do think this is gorgeous. And then things start to fall down for me. I actually like the gauges and what they did. Those two little platforms right there on either side of the gauge cluster, that's pretty cool. But the ergonomics start to fall apart here, and we haven't even gotten to the radio and the HVAC. Why are the memory controls for the seat on the inside of the center stack? Well, put it on the door. Probably was a cost thing, but I see my knee hitting that. It doesn't have memory, so they cheaped out there. The rest of the materials look beautiful, but in a brand that was well known for, let's say, electronic issues, why add more electronics? I have seen this from Jaguar and from Range Rover for most of my life. They keep adding more and more electronics when they're famous for their electronics being glitchy. Fix it, then add it, not the other way around. That makes me extremely nervous. But if you were buying this and you're only going to keep it for 3 years, or if you leased it, if they had a lease at the time, you probably don't care. But for later buyers, or for keeping this for the long term, which is how I look at cars, there's a lot here that scares me. And the final thing is, I hate this gear shifter. I don't care what they say. An automatic should have park, neutral, drive. Maybe a low or a snow. But these J shifters or the ones where you've got to work through a gate, that's just stupid. I don't agree. I personally do not like manual shifting automatics, especially not the flappy paddle gearboxes, right? This, not only do I think it's ridiculous and just adds a layer of frustration to putting it in gear, but it also illustrates the quality of the car. Did you see when they were moving the gear shift around, the whole freaking thing shifted back and forth like it wasn't bolted down? Why do something like that if it's only going to indicate that you didn't invest 10 cents to actually anchor it? That really frustrates me.
Ventilation and climate control is excellent. There's a manual override and buttons to let you change interior humidity. The standard sun...
I've never seen that before. That's pretty cool, especially living in the South here, just in case you couldn't tell from my accent, that to be able to change the humidity, that would be pretty cool, because in certain environments where it's less humid, allowing a little bit more to come in would be good for, I don't know, for reasons, right? That's pretty cool. I've never seen it.
The roof has 2 positions, but no tilt-up vent position. Fully open, it causes a lot of buffeting until you open a rear window. But rear seat passengers in the XJ6 get a lot more headroom than before, plus shoulder belts. And on the Van den Pla, walnut picnic table trays. And plenty of storage in the center armrest, for which you give up third passenger seating room. There are reading lights for 2, and ashtrays that are also entertaining to watch. And back in the boot, there's a new upright position for the spare tire, and a compartment deep enough to store a spare Austin Mini or 2.
Okay, let me talk about the trunk here for a minute, because this is 2 different things. I'm going to go back slightly here, hopefully. There we go. So the first off is there's a styling choice, and you see it a lot in the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s, of very long cars with what look like very thin trunks. They might be big, especially they might measure big, cubic footage. But what they do is they shallow it up for a styling thing. I just recently released the Chevy Caprice retro review, and I don't know that I highlighted it in there, but that's one of the things that I kept thinking about is it's got this huge long trunk, but it seems to be about that thick. If you compare that with the Jettas, they were not very long, but they were super deep, and you could throw so much stuff in there. This Jaguar is the same kind of thing. It's got this very long trunk, but it looks very thin. In fact, the top of it slopes down. The bottom of it actually slopes up. And then when you open it, you've got this huge spare tire. There's not actually a lot of space back here. I don't know if they're going to say cubic footage or not, but this is not a lot of space. 2 bags, this is not a lot of space. And I would be very interested to go back and watch an 86 Accord and see how it compares in terms of how much it can actually handle, because this looks like a horrifically inefficient use of space. I really don't like it. I think the whole thing should be up higher. I think they should have raised the roof, raised the seating, raised the trunk, made it deeper. I don't know. This really frustrates me, honestly, guys. I appreciate you listening to me rant here.
Spare Austin Mini or 2. But judging by all the endurance testing that Jaguar has documented for the XJ6, it shouldn't leave anyone stranded. The new inline 6 should keep it moving right along. It measures 3.6 liters and is the only aluminum inline 6 in production anywhere. But don't let the word aluminum scare you. The cylinder liners are made of steel. With 4 valves per cylinder, the engine's rated at 181 horsepower and 221 pound-feet of torque. That's kind of surprising, especially for 1986. 181, that sounds pretty darn strong. I wish I knew. I'd never watched these in advance, guys. You know that, so I don't have time to prep or research information. I'd be curious what a BMW made. I imagine it's more, but they used inline 6s, and that's pretty impressive. And torque's pretty impressive. That looks like a busy engine compartment to me. It really does. That looks like a nightmare to work on. But
pretty impressive so far. And let's face it, the top of the engine, man, that's just pretty.
Fuel delivery is by Lucasport Fuel Injection. This is a smooth running engine, but our early production car did have a rough idle. The 3.6 makes its power at a higher RPM than most engines these days. In fact, we couldn't get our XJ6 to spin its tires off the starting line. So 0 to 60 times were a little disappointing at 11 seconds. But quarter mile times were very good, averaging 17.5 seconds at 84.
So I've been criticized on the channel for not accounting for the era. And I do apologize, because it's hard to remember. You know, if you're looking at a 2005, 1995, and a 1985, what was the average acceleration for a large sedan for that era? 11 sounds slow. 11 seconds sounds slow. But I suspect that's very competitive with pretty much anything else at the time. I'm sure you'll correct me if I'm wrong.
The XJ6 also gets anti-skid brakes, the latest system from Bosch. It pulled our Jag down from 55 with a very short average distance of 98 feet. Best of all, the brake pedal doesn't pulsate violently as in some other cars with anti-skid brakes.
That is impressive. That is really, really impressive. And for a couple of different reasons. First off, analog brakes were a long time before they started to really be accepted, really be affordable, and start to, in some cases, become standard. 86 strikes me as a little early, so it's nice that they've got what I think off the top of my head is a pretty early adoption of a safety technology. And Motorweek has changed their braking test over the years. And yes, I do mix and match a little bit. I have come up with 115 as a great number. That's a very solid number. And I've had a couple people point out to me that, you know, if it's 55 or 60 or whatever it is, it can vary dramatically based on the amount of energy that's, needed. No matter how you slice it, although this was from 55 miles an hour, 98 feet is spectacular. And I'm telling you, in the 90s, other manufacturers had ABS systems that you could feel it through the brake pedal. So this is a spectacular result, no matter how you look at it.
But here's where the XJ6, believe it or not, really shines. Steering feel is good, plow is minimal, and the car just feels unflappable. While we've been impressed by the handling of some big German sedans in the past, we have to move the Jag ahead of them all. The same goes for its cushy ride, while its interior sound level is impressive too, 65 decibels at 55. The EPA rates the Jaguar XJ6 at 19 city, 29 highway. Our own figure was slightly less at 18.
Wow. Okay, so first off, they're saying this thing handles better than German sedans, some German sedans. That's super impressive. 65 decibels, that's fantastic. And then that EPA, that mileage, that is comparable to the much less powerful Chevy Caprice that was a much bigger car at the same time. That's really, really impressive. Honestly, I'm astounded. Honestly, I am. I thought this review would be faint praise for an aging platform that really needed an investment to replace. Gosh darn, this is pretty impressive.
And what about price? Well, it begins at $40,500. Our top model Vanden Plas will set you back $44,500. That's expensive, sure, but still thousands cheaper than all of its competition. But the best thing about the XJ6 is ride and handling, followed by interior comfort, braking performance, and overall good design and value. Minor misses include too much wind noise from the sunroof, no position memory for seat adjustments, and lackluster low-speed power. In safety matters, the XJ6 passes with halogen headlights, radial tires, 5-mile-per-hour bumpers, and rear seat shoulder belts. It fails to have passive restraints for now, though airbags will appear later, and Jaguar tells us that if you really want an automatic front seatbelt, it can be added. So Jaguar has taken quite a risk with the new XJ6. But current Jaguar owners will have plenty to remind them that this is still a Jaguar. And the owners of other European luxury cars will also be impressed, because the new XJ6 is, quite simply, the best luxury sedan that money can buy.
Wow, that did not go at all like I expected. With excellent BMWs and Mercedes out there, and this is on the cusp of Acura coming out, and then of course later Lexus. For them to come out and say this is the best luxury car available, that's astonishing. You know, that's relatively slow according to how they said it, 0 to 60 time. Doesn't really affect me. That's not what Jaguar is. It's not a street racer. It's not going to light the tires up. This is not meant to be autocrossed. But very, very competent. And almost everything they said was positive. I have trouble remembering a more positive retro review than an 86 Jaguar. I am stunned. I am literally stunned. So here's the deal. You know, I love to do this little mental test, right? Let's go back in time. You've got the money. 86, would I buy a Jaguar XJ? I don't know. Because there's still that question of trust. Now, without Acura, Infiniti, and Lexus, you've got Lincoln, Cadillac, BMW, Mercedes, and Jaguar. I think if I had the money and I wanted something European, I gotta say that I think the Mercedes would still call to me. Heavily biased towards American cars and wanting to support American manufacturers, gotta say the Cadillac would probably appeal to me. But if I watched this, I would absolutely put the Jaguar on my list. How could you not watch this and be like, I need to check that out? That's a really impressive review for a car that I don't think it quite is gorgeous. I think that having the circular headlights but not having the sculpting around them, I think that hurts this car. And they fix it later in the 90s. They come out with an XJ that is amongst my favorite luxury cars. I think it is so unbelievably gorgeous. This just isn't, but I think it's probably very good for its time period. That price, oh my gosh, that price. Now I know, again, I do not research anything before I record these. I want it to be off the cuff, and I know a number of you will always go be like, yeah, but that price in $2023 is XYZ. But still, $40,000 sounds expensive. I'm cheap, guys. It's 2023. I am cheap. If somebody came to me and said, you can buy a Jaguar for $40,000, I'd be like, I don't know. You know, still got repair bills. So still, that price strikes me as insanely high. I imagine that's probably in the neighborhood of, I don't know, $120,000 today? Something like that. I don't know. Let me know. But the end of the story for my buddy. So my friend had his father had that old Volvo, and as a surprise, the family wanted to buy him a Jaguar. And I think it was for his birthday, something like that. And it was a used Jaguar, so it was about 87 or 88 when they bought it, and it was slightly used, as I recall. It may have been older than this, I really don't remember. And it was a beautiful car. It rode great, it handled great, it accelerated just fine, it was so luxurious. But it ended up having a lot of problems along the way. And I'm not aware of what all of them were, but it ended up having just this bunch of little problems. And I want to say he kept it for a year, something like that. And he ended up getting rid of it. And what he got instead was a Nissan King Cab pickup truck with a 4-cylinder engine. So that's the kind of guy we're talking about here. He didn't care about showing off. He didn't need a Rolls Royce. He wanted something he could throw stuff in the back and you know, tool around reliably. And I remember that truck because I remember going over to visit my buddy, and he opened the hood. And so this was about 86, 87, something like that. And being like, look at this. It's a 4-cylinder but it has 8 spark plug wires because it had 2 spark plugs per cylinder. And that was one of the earliest moments in my mind, again, at the time I drove a 76 Buick Regal, of being like, the Japanese are going to kill us. Because they can solve combustion issues by using the most basic common sense. That's not very expensive at the same time. While the Jaguar couldn't stay running. So anyway, guys, if you have a memory of this car, let me know. But this was a cool trip down memory lane because, yeah, I have some memories about this one. Thanks for being here.